like the test for this when we're done to get the certification, is that an in-person thing that we go to? Is it online? What's like the structure for the actual test for
Yeah,
this?
that's a good question. It is an in-person exam. Um, and the in-person exam is, and Todd will probably know more about this, it's 150 questions. Um, and it's 4 hours long. You do get a break in between that 4 hours if I think you have to take it. I don't think you get a choice. You do get you don't have to take it.
Oh, I didn't get to the break.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll say, that a lot of people don't make it to the break as well. The test really isn't that hard once you kind of get through it. And if you've ever taken a standardized test in a building to where you show up and they take all of your belongings and it's in some locker and, all that type of stuff, that's the part that I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with or maybe thrown off first whenever they go into the exam is they're not used to that type of mindset. They had never went and been in a place like that. So if that is you, I would highly suggest before you go to take your test that you go to the testing center and walk in there and actually see the place that you'll be taking the exam. Typically, it's in a cubicle, and inside that cubicle, you do have headphones that you can put on that are noise canceling headphones. There's other things that you can do with the exam. I think we'll talk about that in another class about all that to get into more detail. But there's ways that you can like highlight certain sections of the question, come back to it later, and all those types of things.
Okay, I was wondering, are we able to do it here in town? And are there certain dates that, it's available for us to go? I'm just thinking kind of for planning purposes.
Once you
No,
register for the test on the NIBWIC site, they'll direct you to locate your nearest, I think it's problematic testing center.
Okay.
And they're usually in, most cities with over 200,000 people have one.
yeah,
Okay.
we do have one here in the Springs. Yeah.
And then you go to that testing site's webpage, find an availability date during their testing window, and sign up for the class, sign up for on the testing centers.
Okay. Great. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to look it up on the website real quick, but they just changed. Well, they didn't just change it, but it's new to me since I've looked at it last. Um, so I can't find it right away. But yeah, they do have one here in Colorado. One thing that I was trying to do, but I don't know if we'll be able to get this done for this cohort, is we do have a testing center at one of the high schools, and I want to have at least a practice exam at the high school, but it would be nice if we actually brought that exam into the high school as well. It just has to meet the standards of that organization. That's really what it has to do because they contract it out to those organizations. So, and I think it does meet that criteria, and I think it would be pretty cool if we hosted that type of an exam. But again, I don't know if that'll happen for you, Kelly, or anybody else on here. I think it's probably one of those stretch goals for sure. Um, but yeah, I would imagine the testing center would. I'll look it up and get it to everybody so we can kind of know where we're at on that. That's a good question. Any other questions, especially for planning purposes? Go ahead, Bethany or Beth. Can't find that unmute button. You can use the space bar on your, well, I think only if you set it up that way. Never mind. Yeah, you can write it in and then we'll answer it from there. Um, I'll say the only other piece that you all may be wondering about is I'm going to take the 12 people who have qualified to sit for the exam, which I think is mostly everybody on this call except for maybe one or two people. Everybody here qualifies, I think. So now we're going to partner you all up after this. So I'm going to send out your partner list tomorrow morning. And if there's any issues with that, let me know. But there'll be instructions in there on, just partner up with somebody, record a 20-minute session, whichever stage that you want to coach somebody in, whatever you feel the strongest in. Coach that person, record it, and then let me know, and then we'll assign either myself or Todd to you, and then they'll meet one-on-one. We'll review your coaching session, and then we'll give you the evaluation that you need to take the exam as well. So to take the exam, you'll need two things. You'll need a certificate from this program, and then you'll need that evaluation form, or at least an evaluation date, which we can put on the form or the certificate as well. But
I have a quick
those are two
question
things. Yeah, go ahead.
that, and maybe I missed it. I apologize. I had students
Yeah.
in and out the past few minutes. On May the 22nd, that last day, that 12:30 to 4:30, will that be in person or will that be online as well?
It was meant to be on in person, or not in person, but online. Um, and I assume you mean like online, as in like we're meeting right now, versus
Yeah, like a Teams
asynchronous.
or a
Yeah,
Zoom. Yeah.
yeah, it will be online. But I know that so far, I think we've had several people say that they're not going to be able to make that day. So I don't know what we'll do about it yet. How many people here can't make that day as of right now that they know of?
I would have to say, I'm not sure what time, just that's our last day here in the building. And if they have things for us, usually by 12:30. In the past years, we've been gone, but I don't know how that works for everyone else, that is in District 2. It kind of depends on what the admin has for you that day, because for us in the high school, in the alternative program, that's our checkout day.
Yeah, May 23rd. Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll play that one by ear, and it may be that we have us, you should be able to go. Okay, so because that day is group coaching, is on that day. And, I find that one to be valuable. I'll say you won't be an expert in group coaching after that session, but I'll say most programs don't even talk about group coaching. So that's. But I will say most places that if you go and work as a health coach, will probably expect you to have those type of skills. So if you plan on coaching a lot and doing things like that, if you miss that day, so I should be good. Okay. So it sounds like some people will be good. So we'll still be able to do it. But if you can't do it, I would say, get with us, or maybe even find a coaching continuing education after you become licensed. So that way you can kind of get a little bit more well versed in group coaching. But I'll say there's not too many good ones out there. Todd may correct me in that, but I feel like, that's probably one of the gaps that are out there in the field, is understanding group coaching. And again, like I said, ours is very elementary, or I shouldn't say elementary, but ours is very, low, or I shouldn't say low end. You learn how to do group coaching very fundamentally. We don't get into the details of it. So, or maybe the advanced skills of it. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
But I also think that with this cohort, since most people are teachers, they have a skill set for managing group dynamics. And I think that is something that's lacking in a lot of the group coaching,
I'd agree.
because that group dynamic piece is the underlying foundation for the group coaching. Being able to transfer those coaching skills but manage those group dynamics is the challenge.
Yeah. So that's good too. Yeah. So I think that's a good point. So anyway, we'll play that by ear on that last day. For people who can make it, I know there might be something that comes up in the building that admin may want you to do. I would say the most important thing would be, by that date, have your recordings to Todd and I. So that way we can get that evaluation done and completed. Preferably before then, so that way you can have everything and the mentor session and everything completed by the 23rd.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see, any other questions about that? We'll have another time for probably Q&A at the end of this too, if anything else comes up. And while Todd's teaching, I'll try to look up and see where the exam sites are in the district. So then that way we can get that to you before we get off here too. All right, then I'll hand it over to you, Todd.
All right, lucky me. So you guys have spent, I guess it's been a couple, 3 months now, learning a bunch of different coaching skills, reflections, holding the space, the other focused listening, and a lot of other stuff. And we're going to go over, we can call it a lot of things. We can call it speed coaching. We can call it a lightning session. But it's something that, since I'm a supervisor now, I don't spend a lot of time doing actual coaching where I'm sitting down with the client. The whole purpose of the session is coaching. But I found that, being able to do lightning coaching, a lightning session can be invaluable, and you can do it, and I don't know anybody that's in a supervisory position, or maybe or you got kids, or you got a bunch of different things, but people come to you, with a whole list of concerns or a whole list of items, maybe as a supervisor, someone comes to I'm workload. I didn't get to take my break. I was so overwhelmed with this thing happened, that happened. And you're like, where do I start? But, through coaching, it's about that self-empowerment piece and stuff. And, we're going to reflect what their concerns are to them. And then we're going to identify an area of focus. You brought me 5 things. If you left our conversation satisfied, what's the one thing we would address? Or of the 5 things that you brought me, what is the most pressing on your plate right now? We identify that area of focus. We assess their motivation for why that's the most important thing, and we help them, and we try to empower them, but we're going to assist them in this lightning coaching to identify the next steps. How are they going to take this? Like employee comes to you that with a list of concerns. I didn't get my break because I double scheduled myself. Or, maybe in a teaching environment, I didn't get my break because I was grading papers, because last night at home, I didn't get to grade the papers that I was going to do. And you get that, and the thing that they want to assess is they want to be able to get their break. Why is that important to you? You assess their motivation, but by using importance, and they can go, well, it's important to me because it allows me to decompress during my workday, and I can better be present for the students. And then you identify those next steps. Well, what can you do to ensure that you get your break? And hopefully it's their plan, and they come up with the plan, and then boom, they walk out of there feeling like they were heard, they were listened to, and that they got a plan that they can move forward with. But that's overall opening for it. And, we got a structured content that, I can go over, but I can just introduce you introduce yourself, and, and let me set this up a little better. I'm a supervisor. I got an employee that I'm bringing in, and I'm going to talk to the employee, and I tell the employee, I go, Jim, I got a bunch of stuff that I got to go over, but I also understand that you may have some concerns that you'd like to be addressed. How about you tell me your concerns, your top 3 concerns or top 5 concerns, and we'll develop a goal or something around that, or we'll address those. The person reads off their concerns, or tells you their concerns. And all this time you're reflecting back their concerns to them. And, out of all of your concerns, what item would you really want to focus on working on today, maybe setting a goal around? And they pick that item. And then you're going to use, we talked about mission, aspiration, map, values. You're going to connect this back to their values. How does this help you live your life to what matters most to you? How does this help you feel more supported at work? How does this, help you manage? Because you're listening, you're reflecting all the time, and you're using those coaching skills, and you're able to identify that. And then we're going to assess that motivation on a 0 to 10 scale. How is important to you? Just ask that question. And, if something's 7 or higher, you just reflect back. This is important to you. Or 7, that's pretty high. If it's 6 or lower, you want to ask a follow-up question. And that's science-based. You know, if somebody's 7 or higher, generally speaking, yeah, it's really important. If it's 6 or lower, maybe they got a little ambivalence, or maybe there's some uncertainty there, so you want to explore that a little bit. And you ask, what does a 5 look like? And they explain what that number works. And then you ask them, well, what would it look like if it was a 7? Or what would it look like if it was an 8? And they explain that, and you're listening for those strengths and the things, and you're reflecting back, and that goes to increase that intrinsic motivation, that cognition, and help them realize how important it is to them. And then we're going to work on a goal or setting a SMART action plan around it. Who remembers what SMART stands for? Anybody? SMART. Acronym in coaching. The S is specific. The M is, I see Bethany looking. She's got it written down somewhere.
Measurable.
She knows it.
Measurable.
Measurable. And the A for us is action. Measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-oriented. Time-oriented or time-bound. And that's what we're after with that. And you're going to get with them, you know, what specific action are you willing to take? Explore with them how you'll know you'll accomplish your goal, what's your start. Then you want to explore a couple barriers if you got time, develop a contingency plan around those barriers. And then finally have them know when they'll how will they know you're being successful? I bet you, would you guys like to see a demo on this? So what I'm gonna have everybody participate. And the way I want to do it is for you guys just list, and how can I phrase it? Do this, you know, just because it can be applied to any setting. It can be applied with, you know, peers. It can be applied people you supervise, your kids at home. It can be used with your students, but you know, just take it down and, you know, just list just list 5 things. Just list 5 things that you'd like to be coached around. Just list of concerns. That they don't have to be specifically health, but they can be, you know, but like I can't make it to work on time. I don't have enough time for myself. I spend too much time on TikTok. Anybody need more time? Now here comes the hard part. We got a volunteer. One, two, three.
I'll volunteer.
All right, Bethany. Hey, Charlie, could you spotlight me and Bethany? Because I'm logged in from a different, I don't have. All right, Bethany. Well, first of all, thank you for volunteering. It's putting yourself out there for this learning opportunity. I appreciate that. And I know that you followed my instructions to a T, and you have some concerns that you have. Would you mind sharing what your concerns are?
Sure. Do you want all of them at the same time?
Yeah, just shoot them at me.
All right. So, for some reason, I'm having a hard time walking my dogs after work because it's getting like I get home and I work out and then I'm not walking my dogs as much as I should. Um, I'm on YouTube too much. Um, Once I get on, it's really hard for me to get off. I would like to go to bed a little bit earlier. I would like to work on my sleep quality and make more time for like my family, not my husband and my kids, but like my mom and my sister, so my kind of extended family.
All right, so walking the dogs.
Yep.
How many dogs you got? You said
Two,
dogs.
two doggies.
Two doggies, and what type of dogs are they?
Oh, they're both pound puppies for sure. They're both little. One's sitting right there. One is
Yeah.
a Jack Russell and a Basset, and the other one we're not sure what he is. He looks like a big Chihuahua. Yeah, he's super cute. He's our
Well,
old guy.
you got some smaller dogs, and I can see your face lighting up when you're talking about your
Oh
dogs,
yeah,
and it pains you a little bit that you don't get them their exercise that they want.
yeah, definitely.
And the YouTube, is it just pure entertainment that you're watching,
Definitely.
or is it educational stuff that make me smart?
Well, it kind of starts out that way. It starts out like I will look up something like, I don't know, an exercise or food or something like that. And then I wind up going down a rabbit hole and it's like shorts and it's like TikTok. It's terrible. Well,
Almost
for
like
me,
it
it's
was designed to
terrible.
suck you in like that.
Definitely. And it works for
Almost.
me. Yeah. And I'll say, oh, I'll only be on for like 15 minutes. And then like an hour and a half has gone by and I don't even know where the time's gone. Yeah.
and and then you got that get to bed earlier and sleep quality. Those are kind of related, or are they separate in your mind?
Um, well, they're kind of separate because sometimes I can go to bed early, but that doesn't mean I'm going to sleep well. Um, it just gives me longer time to get sleep. I have a kind of a rough time sleeping sometimes. Um, but going to bed early gives me more time, even if I don't sleep well, but it gives me enough time to rest more. So,
So that bed earlier, that's almost a compromise because you're having a hard time with the quality sleep, but at least my head's on a pillow.
yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the looking for that quality time with the extended family.
Yep.
You get it with your at the home with the husband and the kids, but it's
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
missing a little mom and mom time.
Yes, it's more it's kind of more I feel guilty. And that's I do want to see them and hang out with them, but then the my guilt is what's kind of pushing me to really find a time for them or a better time for them.
You love them, and
Mm.
that induces guilt in you that not spending the time with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm gonna recap here. You got walking the dogs, YouTube, bed
Hmm.
earlier, sleep
Hmm.
quality, extended family. Out of those areas, is there one that you'd like to focus on, and maybe we set a goal around, an action step
Hmm.
around?
Let's do let's do the dogs. Walk-in time for the dogs.
Let's do the dogs,
Hmm.
the walking
Yeah.
times, and I heard your face lights up when you talk to the dogs. What is it
Mhm. Oh,
about
here we
them that
go.
really induce you to select this?
All right, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
Your face lights up when you talk about the dogs, and then someone said something about your dogs in the background, and you lit up again. But really, what is that connection with the dogs that out of your whole list, you pick that?
Well, they're part of our family and they're really important to me. And I have an old dog that can't walk that much, and I have a young dog that could walk all day. So, um, I do more small walks just because of my older dog, and I feel guilty not walking him as much as my younger dog. But for some reason, I'm just, I don't know, having a hard time doing it.
I heard dogs are people too, and you care about their health.
I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And they're part of that family.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, on that 0 to 10 scale, how important is it to walk your dogs more?
I would say at least a 7 or an 8 for sure.
7 or an 8. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's up there. So, when it comes to walking a dog, I heard you talking a little earlier. You come home from work, you work out, and then you're supposed to walk the dogs, but that doesn't always happen.
Yep.
So specifically, what is it that you're after with this dog walks? Is it a frequency, a length, a number of days a week?
Um, Frequency, so days of the week. It really should be every day, but I'm certainly not doing that. So, like a couple of days a week would be better than what I'm doing. Yeah.
So we're going to start with 2 days a week.
All right, I can do that.
Oh, that's what you said, 2 days a week. I don't want to put
Yeah.
words in your mouth.
No. I know. I'm talking to myself. I can do
Okay,
that.
all right. So 2 days a week,
Yep.
and the action is to walk them,
Yep.
and you got a distance, a route.
Um, we have a couple little trails around where I live. So as long as we get, um, I'll say 20 minutes. I'll say a time limit, at
All
least
right,
20 minutes.
you got 2 days a week for 20 minutes. You got specific days of the week: Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, Sunday, Friday. What's the days?
How about if I do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday?
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. You're up to 3 now.
Oh, yep, Tuesday, Thursday.
Tuesday,
I really
Thursday.
need to do 3.
Okay.
But Tuesday, Thursday.
When are you going to start?
Yes. I will start this Thursday.
Starting this Thursday.
Hmm.
And what if it's raining?
Then I will walk them on Friday.
All right. So you got a little backup plan for weather and
Yeah.
stuff. If you can't get it on Tuesday, Thursday, you hit Wednesday, Friday, or all right.
Yeah.
And put that time bound piece on there. How will you know you've accomplished it when you've done it 2 weeks in a row consistently, 3 weeks in a row, a month, a year?
I would say let's do a month.
Right.
But once I always say to myself, the hardest part of working out is putting on my tennis shoes. So if I get used to putting on my tennis shoes, like as soon as I get home from work, then I will walk them. But I say getting into that habit, I'll take a month. Yeah,
A month.
month would be good. Yeah.
All right. You're going to walk the dogs, Bethany.
All right.
Shoot me back your plan.
All right. So starting this Thursday, I'm gonna walk my dogs Tuesdays and Thursdays, um, after work, for a month for at least 20 minutes, 2 times a week.
All right, Bethany. How are you feeling about your plan?
Yeah, I feel good. Yeah.
Feeling good?
Yeah. Yeah. That's simple. I just need to put my tennis shoes on, I guess. Yeah.
Put the
Mhm.
tennis shoes on.
Yep.
Right. Enjoy.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Charlie, if you want to spotlight us. And I just want to say a couple things, and then if Charlie wants to debrief it real quick, we call it speed coaching, 5-minute coaching. I was just at about 9 minutes. We had that slight interruption, but I really wanted to demonstrate the importance of making that goal as specific at the end and as possible. So I took a little bit more time. We could have left if time's a factor, we could have left that a little, not quite as firmed up, but I used a couple extra minutes to get that firmed up a little more with her.
All right. Well, what did everybody notice about that session? What were some of the things that really stood out?
The conversation flowed really well. Like she had her 5 things and she kind of knew what she wanted to specifically look at. And it was something that was important to her, obviously.
So something important and very pinpointed. Absolutely.
It felt really efficient because it was kind of like what we were doing in a lot of the other, sessions, but all just kind of crunched together really quick and then had a goal. And so, yeah, it just felt really efficient.
Yeah, really efficient. That's right. And that's really one of the main goals, right, of a 5-minute session is to be efficient and also to kind of integrate it, like Todd was saying, into your day-to-day practice. Let's see, anybody else? Let's see, Bethany, how was that for you?
It was really good. I have been thinking about neglecting my doggies for the last I guess at least month. So I liked how it was quick and we talked about what that my dogs were important to me and we worked out a goal and a very attainable goal and yeah, it's nice. What I'm really noticing about the health coaching, it's like really nice to be just listened to and heard, which is fantastic. Like, because everybody's, I don't know, I have a hard time listening sometimes. So it's a nice lesson in listening.
That's right. A nice lesson in listening, sitting back and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, good. Well, so it sounds like it was beneficial, efficient, stayed on topic, really focused on something that you were looking forward to getting and re-engaging in. I see some. It was quick but productive. Absolutely. I like how she listened, but it seemed like she owned it. That's right. So the plan was most certainly hers and had the backup plan. I like how Todd said, what are you going to do if it's raining? Right. Like, what are you going to do? Right. A very practical thing. And I think actually on Thursday and Friday, it's supposed to snow and rain, or maybe Friday and Saturday. So, very realistic to everything, which is pretty cool. So absolutely, this 5-minute session is really, like Todd said, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes, but it really is trying to find ways to be able to integrate this in. So, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's with teachers that you're working with, this would be a great opportunity to kind of integrate those things into your practice. And that's really what the goal is. So let's see, Todd, were you going to cover anything else?
I just, it's been really cool for me, as a supervisor to be able to integrate this when people come because it's empowering for the employees. And, you do it with people and it's that satisfaction that people lead the conversation with. Because, sometimes when you're in, like, whether you're a teacher or you're in, let's just say you're in that authority position. And oftentimes they expect you to have answers, but we all realistic and know we always don't have all the answers. And sometimes it's just worse when you tell them, well, I don't know, or I don't have the answers. But by using this, it can be empowering for the person and it lets them know that they have the answers within themselves a lot of times. And sometimes it just gives them a clearer focus of what the problem is and why it irks them. But it still has that beneficial effect.
All right. That's right. Sometimes just having that is very important. Sorry, I was trying to get something together over here on the side.
I think it's a listening piece. Just Bethany even said it, she felt heard.
That's right, as I wasn't listening. Um, but most certainly, right? It's funny, we were doing a um, restoration circle at a school. I won't name the school just for some privacy, but we were doing that just on Friday. And one of the biggest things that they said out of that circle was it was great to just have somebody come here and listen to us, right? So back to that piece is that power of listening, the power of the pause and all that really empowers people to feel heard. And that's really what I feel like we lack a lot of times, right? And I think it was Stephen Covey that said, seek first to understand before you speak. I don't think that's exactly how he said it, but seek first to understand before responding. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we kind of jump into some of these different skills as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we can kind of jump into this and then we'll kind of go from there. I will say, I apologize. We got green slides today. Usually I have it, white with the District 2 logo. I got a new computer. So now it's going to be green today. But the other slides were on the original computer that I had and not this new one. So, but we're going to talk a little bit about some of the different skills. We were supposed to go over these the day after spring break whenever we went over stage 3, but given the limited time that we had that morning, we kind of cut these skills out and went straight into stage 3. So now we're going to kind of backtrack and go over these skills. So if you don't have the slides, I would say go back in your email or something and get them from that day, because I know I added them onto the slides. They'd be on the beginning of that stage 3 slides. And yeah, I apologize for that. It was just really because, I would have had all this put together a little bit easier if I didn't get the new computer. So, all right. Any questions right now while I'm getting this all set up? All right. So the first one is going to be the decisional balance tool. Has anybody here ever heard of the decisional balance tool? Todd. Not Todd. Anybody but Todd. Oh my gosh.
Anybody ever heard of a pros and cons list?
It's basically the same thing. All right. Well, I'm trying to get my computer set up. It's just not working right now. I cannot get this thing to work for the okay, there we go. Now I'm gonna move y'all over here. Okay, there we go. Now I got this. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go over the decision balance tool. So really what we're doing is we're navigating change every single day, right? And what we're doing is we're going to be working with our clients on this, and we kind of need a structured way to do that. And the decisional balance tool gives us that structure. It really allows us to explore the pros and cons of making a change, and then kind of helps the client really understand and see that written, almost like that learning or that visual learning aspect, and not making a change, right? So we're going to be exploring all those. And really this is the decisional balance tool right here. And whenever you look at this, you would almost break this down as in quadrant 1, quadrant 2 being the advantages of no change, quadrant 3 disadvantages of change, and then disadvantages of no change. And whenever we break it down this way, we're kind of walk through it through that lens as we do all the advantages, which is basically like saying we're going to do all the pros, right? And then all the cons. So that way we can kind of walk through this list. And as we walk through it, here goes an example of quitting smoking. If anybody here, without showing hands, unless they're really wanting to, quitting smoking is one of the worst things to ever do. If you were a smoker, I was a smoker for many years. I started when I was in the military, and once I got out of the military, it was time to quit, and it was one of the hardest things that I think I've ever done. So whenever we're doing that and looking at it, right, we're looking at the advantages of quitting smoking, and here we have you would sleep better, because I don't know if many people know that there is actually caffeine and other things inside of cigarettes and tobacco, so it keeps you up, right? Your clothes won't smell like smoke, and won't experience cravings at church, school, whatever it is, right? Whenever you're there. Advantages to keep smoking. Smoke breaks with your friends, right? That was one of the main reasons why I started smoking in the military, was everybody got a smoke break. So then everybody went out and smoked. And then, that's where you had all the scuttlebutt and all the things going on, right? So everybody did it. It was a morning ritual with coffee, right? It's kind of that morning aspect or after dinner aspect or whatever it is. There's some type of ritual with it. Um, and then excuse to give myself alone time when conflict with a partner. Another thing is you can always use, I need to go smoke a cigarette as an excuse to get away from people. Disadvantages of smoking, right? You have withdrawal symptoms, won't know or won't want to do with hand or won't know what to do with your hands, right? If anybody's ever smoked, one of the biggest habit breaking parts of it was what do you do with your hands, right? So that was kind of a disadvantages of quitting, right? Can't handle smoke anyway, or can't smoke anyway emotions. So you can't smoke away your emotions. Disadvantages to keep smoking, increases cost of cigarette or increasing cost of cigarettes. Grandson, ask what you do, why you smoke and what you're doing. And then of course the cough and of course the health reasons, right? So whenever we're really breaking this down, we're really looking at the advantages to continuing a behavior, the advantages to quitting that behavior, and then the disadvantages to quitting that behavior and the disadvantages to keeping that behavior. And we're kind of breaking it down, and we're engaging with the client in such a way that they're the ones who filled this out, and we're just using reflective listening, maybe even adding pieces to different sections, maybe challenging that if that's what it calls as well. But really the decisional balance tool is much more than just one single simple activity. It can be a template for ongoing explanations and insights, right? It's almost something that you can pull back up and then go back and revisit as we're talking about motivation for a change and why they wanted to change. So now, if you would and do this, I would invite everybody in the class to go ahead and get a sheet of paper if you have one. If not, maybe use your iPhone, use like the notes if you're handy with technology. There's ways to do this in notes, but go ahead and consider a behavior change you are contemplating now. And then as you do that, go ahead and start to begin and fill out the advantages of change, advantages of no change, disadvantages of change, and disadvantages of no change. And then I'll give you about 5 minutes or so to fill that out. I should have had like the Jeopardy music playing. That was a missed opportunity. All right. Does anybody need any more time? All right. Well, so what did you all notice filling out that decisional balance tool?
On my end, I had the positives of no change was the one that had the least amount of things written in the box.
So the least amount of things was in the positive one for no change.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. And whenever you think about that, what really stood out in all of that? Was it just more that there was less things in there, or was it more that
It was
kind of what
easier
was the
to come
difference?
up with things for the other 3 boxes than that one for the advantages of no change. There just weren't. So mine was drinking more water. And the only advantage I put of no change was less bathroom breaks.
Got it.
Whereas my other 3 boxes all had between 2 and 3 things in them.
Yeah, that's a good example, right? Is sometimes we may not have that many advantages to no change, but I do think it's a good tool to be able to sit there and think about it. Because I'll say drinking water, before you said it, I didn't think about bathroom breaks being one of the things, right? But even just going to fill up your water is another break, right? And different things like that. So that makes sense. See anybody else?
I had the opposite problem. The least amount I had for mine were the disadvantages of change, which makes me realize it's not a realistic goal.
Well, yeah, that's one way to look at it. It could be an unrealistic goal, or that you hadn't really thought about all the changes yet, right? And all the different things is that you're wanting to accomplish out of it.
It can't be that.
It can't be that. That's right. It can't be that. Most certainly not. Let's see. Anybody else?
Mine was the same. I did it around giving up coffee, and I had more reasons to keep drinking it.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. I'm actually working on the same goal right now, Kelly. I don't know if that's a realistic goal for you, but it's just to cut back coffee. And, I always find a good, especially like now that it's colder, right? Coffee's warm, just everything about it. Oh, man. Um, let's see. Let's see. Jamie put usually the pros outweighed the cons. Absolutely. So it always pops out. And then Taylor put more advantages than disadvantages. Absolutely. Right. I think this is a good tool to be able to see a visual of those things. And I'll also add that if you had a hard time kind of with the 4 quadrants, I think Todd definitely mentioned it before, is a good example of where you could literally just do the pros and cons list, right? If you just wanted to have 2, you know, just a line down the sheet of paper with pros and cons, right? And then could still start the conversation. In my opinion, I think this just gives you more of a global view of everything going on and can give you more talking points as a coach with all those different pieces in there. But just so you know, this is just as equivalent to using a pros and cons list. So no strict rules. Let's see. Were you going to add anything, Todd, on that?
I was gonna say this is a really good tool for working through values conflicts. If you remember when we talked about values and you guys laid it out here, where here your advantages, your pros are outweighing your cons, generally speaking. And a lot of times our values conflicts are our deal values, impacting, those impulse values, I value my health bacon cheeseburger. And they allow people to see that in a clear format and allow them to work through it, because maybe they don't eliminate the bacon cheeseburgers, but they cut them down drastically or something, and it can lead to those. It can lead to compromises, or it can and really lead to people making real changes. But overall, it works for that well.
That's right. So yeah, definitely points to a lot of those value conflicts for sure. And this is definitely great to kind of start. And I think we talk about this later, which is when would be a good place to use this. and that is in that contemplation stage, right? Especially whenever you're kind of exploring those values and trying to get them to start thinking about, well, they're thinking about change, and now you're trying to get them to move into that next phase. So kind of thinking about that, right? That's kind of that goal of the coach here, right? Is we're going to approach it curious, non-judgmental. What is leading you to want to change? What are your beliefs about not changing, right? These are some of those questions that can really help you whenever you're implementing a decisional balance tool or even a pros and cons list. And then you can kind of reflect a change talk, right? And, kind of continue with that golden question in coaching, which is what else, right? I always feel like that's the golden question. If you ever are kind of stuck and want to know a little bit more, you don't know what to do, kind of just throw that question out there. What else? It makes it sound like it's kind of curious. So going back to Todd's point, what type of reflection would be useful whenever we're using and implementing a decisional balance tool? Yeah, he wants that cheeseburger, but so most certainly that double-sided reflection, right? So whenever we're really working with values, and I think that would always be the key word in value conflicts, is the best reflection and tool that you kind of have in your arsenal is a double-sided reflection, because that really gets that change talk and really gets them start to thinking about those change opportunities, right? It's kind of like, oh man, my value's here, and then now I'm struggling with this, and it shows that value conflict. Go ahead, Todd.
I'm just going to point out, we got the word but on the slide, and you may even see the word but on the exam when they're talking about double-sided reflections, but I strongly encourage all of you to use the word and. Has anybody ever heard the phrase, you can forget about everything somebody said before they said but? Because basically what that does is when you use but, it lends credence to the latter part of your phrase. You want to end it on the side of change. But you want to use and give that equal weight to both sides and let the client make their decision.
That's absolutely right. Is we always have to think about, that word that combines the two is really powerful, right? And I would say is more of an advanced skill for sure of making sure to add that. And other words that you might hear there is although, right? So you like to enjoy donuts, although you should really get on the exercise, right? Or whatever it is, right? Whatever the value conflict is. Once you add that although in there, that's another other word that, again, is used in common language. And like Todd said, you may even see it in places, but it is, adding the and in there creates a non-judgmental stance, right? It's them that get to form the opinion about whether they're going to judge that in a negative light. But anytime we add but, although, I'm trying to think of another one that might be in there, but those types of filler words or transition words between sentences definitely are meaningful. And I think adding and in there is an advanced skill for coaches, right? Because it's not our place to try to judge that in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes putting but there, although, or whatever it is, automatically adds that there's some negative connotation to it. So that's good.
Well, and you're going to judge all day and twice on Sunday. It's just we want to self-manage and not make that apparent.
Absolutely. Because I think in the next one I talk a little bit more about that gremlin in the back of your head. And that self-talk, you're going to be judging all day long. It's normal to judge. It's not normal to act on that judgment. And it's up to us to kind of mitigate it from in our head to out of our mouth, right? It's that cognitive effort that we got to take. All right. Yeah, we can go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and do this. Let me see. Let me get the breakout rooms set up. Let's see. So in this breakout, what we're going to do is we are going to we're going to break everybody out, and then as you can kind of see on here, We're going to practice asking the questions, right? Listening for change talk and reflecting. So we're just going to get into dyads and we're going to try this out for a little bit. As clients refer to your notes of the previous reflection, right? So you already have your pros and cons list or your decisional balance tool, the 2x2 form. As a coach, try different ways of addressing pros and cons of changing and not changing. What is leading you to want to change? What are the benefits of not changing? And then what's the downside to making the change? And then remember, that we're doing this with curiosity and non-judgment. I know we put those two skills up there, but I'd also say use the power of the pause during this time too. Anytime with value conflicts, I think that's another big tool that we have in our belt besides that double-sided reflection is the power of the pause, because we got to give them time to think about that value conflict, right, before they respond. Let's see, any questions before we get out and practice this? I'd say roughly give about 3 minutes per person, and then rotate. I'll try to keep up with it in the chat, and then give y'all the time to change over. I probably won't start the clock until about 30 minutes after we get into the rooms, just so you can say hello and all that other stuff. But let's see, any questions? I don't have the chat pulled up.
It's not a question. I just had something to share.
Yeah,
I
please go
have
ahead.
someone who's coming to pick up a piece of furniture from me, and they'll probably be here in 2 minutes. So I might need to sit out for the next 10 minutes or so to load it up in their car and stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be all right.
Okay.
No big deal. Let me see. So that was Hope. Let me look at the room though real quick.
Maybe we could just take a quick little break.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's take a quick break. Let's be back at 5:25. Let's take a 10-minute break. Everybody good with that? Sounds good. And we'll revisit this and then we'll jump back into it. All right. Hopefully everybody's back. Um, besides maybe Hope, I guess. Hope may still be doing her thing. But we're going to go ahead and do a breakout. So Christina, we're going to have you stay back in this main room with Taylor. So just so you know that, and then Todd and I will just turn our cameras off and pin you two, and y'all can do the exercise that way. But any questions before we do the breakout? It's really just going over the behavioral balance tool. All right, then we'll go ahead and open up the rooms. If you do have any questions, just reach out, and then I'll try to send an announcement in about 3.5 minutes. Sorry, that took me forever. I apologize. But here you go.
Hi, Taylor. I see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you.
There's a lot of static coming through. Oh, I think it's better now. Okay.
I do hear some static too. I don't know where it's coming from. But my computer's not charging properly. So I hope that it doesn't die because I have it plugged in, but the little electric thing doesn't come on. So if I suddenly fade out, that's why.
Okay, sounds good.
So what choice were you trying to make?
I was going over, I was actually working on quitting vaping.
That's a good one. That's probably something that's become more popular. I could see how that may be a hard decision to make.
Yeah.
So when you were thinking about that change, what were the advantages that you came up with for changing?
The advantages of change that I came up with was the fact that I would be saving money. And that's something that we try to do in every other aspect of our lives. So why wouldn't I try to go down that same path with, okay, I'm sorry, this static is just driving me insane right now.
Is it me? I don't know. I'm going to mute myself and tell me if you still hear it.
Okay.
It's me. It's my computer. It's overheating and it's not wanting to charge. I think it's going to die. I'm sorry. And you're muted again somehow.
I was focusing more so on the saving money aspect. We try to save money in every other area of our lives, so why wouldn't I try doing this? For one, of course, it's going to be better for my health. And I think what gets me the most right now is like, I would love for just the cravings to be gone. I would love to not feel like I am tied to something or that something owns me. So I thought it was more freeing in a mindful way, and obviously a health way as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like your motivation is that you probably just really want to take more control over your life and have that freedom of time and money and control over your body. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what were you thinking the disadvantages of changing might be then, if with such strong motivations? What would be the disadvantage?
The disadvantages of change would be I've been smoking since I was 14 years old. The only time I have ever not smoked was when I was pregnant, and it was so easy. I never second guessed it by any means as soon as we had conceived. But because of the fact like I don't know really anything else, if that makes any sense. And I worry about how stressed out I might become because that is one of my stress relievers. And I worry about like the withdrawals from it because I didn't really have any while I was pregnant, but I also had a lot of other things going on. So I feel like I just didn't experience it directly, if that makes any sense. So that was the disadvantages of change.
It sounds to me like once you found out you got pregnant, that maybe you were thinking of somebody else besides yourself, and you wanted to be healthy for your baby and have a healthy baby.
Yeah, most definitely.
Do you consider that in your advantages as well of quitting? I mean, I don't know if you smoke around your baby, but having it around was that a consideration?
Actually, I did not put that on there because of the fact that we distance ourselves, if that makes any sense. We don't sit there and vape around anybody else or anything like that. But it is a really good point, actually.
I'm not trying to put your ideas in your head. I'm just connecting, the reasons of why you wanted to quit in the first place.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it would be more of a role modeling thing too. If they see that mom and dad aren't doing something that they would typically do or taking time away to typically do that.
Yeah. So have you come to a decision?
Yes, I have. And it's been the same decision all along. It's just putting it into action and actually doing something about it.
I know a lot of people that have quit several times, and they usually end up substituting the smoking or vaping with something else, like eating or chewing gum, or sometimes like exercising. They just get into something else. Did you consider that in your decision making?
Yes. I intermittent fast right now. I don't eat a whole lot. I really watch my weight. And I do worry that it might increase my cravings for food or sustenance. I already chew gum. I work 16-hour shifts in a prison. So I already chew gum to get me through my shifts. So yeah, like I said, I know what I need to do. I think I know how to do it. It's just actually having to force myself to do it.
Well, it sounds like you have the motivation and you know all of the pieces. It's just maybe really writing down some action steps about what you're going to do next. Yeah. I think you can do it. I believe in you.
Thanks.
It's important enough to you. I can tell.
Yeah, it really is.
Good for
Awesome.
you.
All right. So,
Well, go ahead.
So Christina, what is one change that you have been focusing on making, or one decision that you've been hemming and hawing about making a change with?
Well, kind of like you, I know the change that I need to make, but I don't know if I'm ready to make it.
Okay.
And that is, I play games on my phone, like way too much. Anytime I need like a brain break, I'll turn to my phone and I'll play little games on it. And I'll switch up the games. It's not always the same game. I'll do like the New York Times, Wordle, or the Connections, or I'll do like a little puzzles to keep my brain going. Yeah.
So you fill your time with Brain activities is what I'm understanding.
I'm wasting my time. I think I'm wasting my time. And that was like one of my big motivations is I feel like if I wasn't doing that, I could be spending my time doing other things that I probably would enjoy more actually.
So being able to take the time that you spend currently playing your games and putting it into something that you feel might be more beneficial or it got really loud again, sorry. Or it might be more worth it is something that you're looking to do.
Yeah. Are we all coming back now?
Yeah, we're all coming back now.
There's a lot of people in our room.
Yeah. I'll unspot you all. Or
I
maybe we
don't
can keep you
want to
spotlighted.
put all my deep dark secrets about my obsession to everyone.
That's right. That's right.
Thank
Well,
you,
so
Taylor.
besides maybe time, how was that for everybody? It was good. Did anybody notice anything, any skills or being able to implement this or anything that really stood out to them?
I guess it's just thinking about the transitions. You know, when you have a chart like that, um, it's easy to talk about everything once you're in there, but making the transition between one section to the next.
So kind of moving from one section to the next, like advantages of not smoking or whatever it is to the advantage or disadvantages.
Yeah, without sounding scripted or like disingenuous.
Or just robotic, right? Just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, now we're moving on to disadvantages.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that'll come with skill, but I think that is part of it, right? It definitely feels clunky. If clunky's a real word, but kind of feels clunky, kind of like where do we go next? And sometimes I think as you all get or as we all get better at implementing things like this, I think sometimes it comes natural and as a natural transition from moving one box to the next because sometimes you can see where some of the things that they're saying may also be an advantage or a disadvantage, right? So then you can kind of use that as an opportunity to transition to the next one. But yes, absolutely. It feels kind of clunky, definitely at first. Let's see, anything else? Sorry, I don't have a chat pulled up. The boxes seem to help me see the positives and the advantages. Okay, that's good too. Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of helps you, even as a coach, be able to see it as well. The boxes seem to help me see the positives of changing. Oh, no, it went down one. Sorry. Doing the 4 boxes gives you a lot to talk about. It does, right? Gives you so much to talk about. I would say typically in each box, people are going to have roughly about 2 to 5 bullet points in there, right? That's not exact science, but I think that does give you a lot to talk about, right? It gives you a lot to start intertwining and interweaving a lot of those double-sided reflections, right? To really challenge that value conflict that we're seeing come out of that. So it really gives you a whole lot of data, a whole lot of information to really be able to start operating in. And then you learn a lot about the client when they list such different varying perspectives of their life, right? Because we're really looking at, if you think about it, we're looking at 2 polarized ends of what's going on in their lives, right? Where they want to be and almost what they're doing, right? And we're kind of seeing exactly that big piece of it. And the boxes easily builds the curiosity to know more. Yeah, it's almost natural, right? It's a natural progression to be able to kind of learn a little bit more about what's going on. So that's really good.
Charlie,
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
my partner and I also talked about how, not in either of ours, but I think this would also help you identify someone's mindset. If they just have their mind set on one way or another, you'll be able to tell when they start talking it through.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of brings us into that stage of change, right? This is a great place. I think I already mentioned this, so I'll go ahead and hit the button to say, like, if they're thinking about that change, right? Because that's where contemplation is, then that is, what we kind of see. But to Don's point, if they're in pre-contemplation stage still, and we're doing a decisional balance tool, that decisional balance tool, our pros and cons list may be very lopsided, right? If they're kind of like, I'm not ready to do this change, let's go back to the quitting smoking analogy. And then whenever they're coming up with disadvantages of not smoking and they don't list not smelling bad, right? They're not listing like any of the things that are just naturally there. I would say just looking at the stages of change and where that client would be that they're still in that pre-contemplation stage. So then you would almost reset your skill set, our skills, to say, okay, maybe the decision balance tool isn't there yet, but since they're starting to think about change, maybe this is an area that we just go and talk about values. What are their values, right? And kind of go back to that beginning phases of what we've done in some of those beginning skills. But that was a good transition, Don. I appreciate you setting me up for that right into this one. Because I definitely think that is it, right? Is if you see that they're not coming out and really taking it serious for that pros and cons list, decisional balance tool, whatever format you use it in, then they are definitely in that pre-contemplation stage. And in my opinion, the pre-contemplation stage is kind of going back to that value, going back to that mission, kind of aligning some of those beginning phases of what we do. Don is referencing that I'm definitely not ready to give up my coffee. That's right. I don't blame you. Coffee is a necessity and a mindfulness activity. So, you know. Okay. Also helps identify incongruence. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Kind of helps start to navigate some of those pieces that just aren't adding up. So I think that's another good one. So kind of moving into interrupt and redirect. This is another skill that we teach in health and wellness coaching, and also another skill, and I may have said this whenever we were talking about stage 3, another skill that I think you all as teachers and educators that work with young kids are probably pretty well versed in. I couldn't imagine that there's not one of you that have not probably done this. I'll say at least 2 weeks, but I'm sure that you have done it in the last 24 hours probably. I think this is something we'll touch on, but we won't go into too much detail. But it is a skill that you will see on the exam. It's also a skill that is also misrepresented of exactly when to interrupt. And I think that's probably the more difficult skill, is to know when to interrupt somebody. The redirect is always kind of easy, right? Because we know we need to get them back on topic, right? Back on track, right? So we can get that part pretty easy. But I think the interrupt a lot of times is we know that we want to interrupt a person and then we stop listening to them, right? Because our head, we've already made a decision that this, whether it's a kid talking too much, whether it's a kid that's completely off topic, you kind of already know in the back of your head that I'm going to have to do something, and then we kind of jump in and jump in too soon, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So also, this was one thing that also stands out, right? Is culturally, we are taught not to interrupt. So, whenever we do interrupt, sometimes it feels very unnatural. And then, again, other times is in the back of our heads, we have that kind of gremlin in the back of our head, right? So we don't want to step on anybody's toes. We don't want to cut people off. But I also say it's also extremely challenging if you have that ADHD kid right in front of you that is not stopping talking about whatever topic it is that you need to get on to, whatever you need, and being able to interrupt that without cutting them off, without being rude or stepping on their toes or whatever you want to call it, can be kind of challenging. And I think we also need to acknowledge that interrupting people culturally is kind of taboo, I guess you can say, even in American culture. But I would say even in other cultures, it's, gets even more taboo in some cultures for sure. So why interrupt and redirect, right, is to redirect back to the coaching conversation, right? So if we do interrupt, we need to interrupt with purpose. And one of the first things would be that they're off topic of the coaching conversation. Now, granted, every now and again, you're going to get off topic with the coaching situation because you're talking about values, you're talking about people's families, you're doing all these things and kind of getting back to it. But really, you know, if you get too far off topic, right, we got to get them back on conversation. If we're not really in the coaching structure, then we need to get back into that structure. We need to get back into that coaching process to keep the coaching process on track. So that's number two. And then also to help the person stay focused, right? So kind of going back to that piece of the kid just not being focused, talking way too much, right? Whatever it is going on, trying to get them back on focus, right? So if we need to focus back on the coaching process, coaching skills, and then also to pause and offer an appropriate affirmation and acknowledgement. So sometimes we might interrupt to say, you know, let's just say they're continuously talking about a topic, and then you can see that they're getting more and more physically upset about talking about that topic, and they're kind of getting off topic. You know, a good way to do or be able to get that back on topic, sorry, is to acknowledge how frustrated they are about talking about that topic, and then say, with that frustration, why don't we stay back on topic with what we're doing, right? It's an easy way to kind of see it, especially if you see them getting some type of emotion or their physical body starting, you can see their face turning red, you know, whatever it is, right? Palms or fist balling up, things like that can really help us be able to kind of pause that inappropriate behavior. I shouldn't say inappropriate. Pause what is going on with that person to kind of get them back on track for topic before we go too far down a rabbit hole. So interrupting, right, needs to be mindful. This is kind of what I talked about earlier, is we have this unconscious interrupting, right? And that's often whenever we're waiting to hear for the end of someone's story, right, to interject what we have in the back of our mind. So I think a good example of this is we're on a coaching topic, we're coming up with a goal, and let's just say a kid or a student or whoever it is starts going off topic to talk about something that they want to do that might be another goal that you're not talking about, right? I think that happens a lot of times. And whenever we see that happening in our heads, we're like, oh, I got to get this back on topic. We're going down a whole rabbit hole. I don't want to do it. So then we just kind of unconsciously start to interrupt them. And, you know, and unfortunately, that doesn't allow the client to really be heard, right? Kind of going back full circle to what we talked about earlier, is we really want our clients to be heard. So now conscious interrupting, I think this is a little bit more intentional and kind of mindful in whenever we do it, right? It's understanding that there's a need and purpose in interrupting and redirecting, and we're going to provide that, and we're going to do it to help focus, to redirect, and then dive deeper into topics, right? That's the goal of interrupting, not just to interrupt because they're off topic, right? We need to interrupt with purpose, intention, and be mindful about that interruption. Because I will say, and I don't think it's this slide, or if we talk about it, interrupting can be a fast way to ruin rapport with a lot of our clients. And I'll even say, working at the at CRA. Does anybody here work at CRA? I know maybe some of y'all might be.
Yes, I do.
Oh yeah, Catherine.
Yep.
So, you know, one thing that I'll say is we were talking to people at CRA, and you know, we were talking about if you're getting ready to see one student at CRA. Oh man, I don't know if I should talk too much about this then. But whenever you are talking to a student, and then you're getting ready to take that student for a one-on-one session inside of, you know, therapy, or, you know, you just need to pull that student aside for the time being, and you have that dedicated time, but then a crisis happens in that building, like it seems like, especially on the middle school side, is crises are happening all the time. So then that teacher doesn't see that. So then you might be able to reinforce this. But then, you know, whenever those crises are happening, and then now you don't spend that one-on-one time with that student because it got interrupted, well, that could also be very triggering, very ruining rapport for that one student that was finally about to have one-on-one time, and then now that one-on-one time got pulled away for whatever reason, right? So I think, you know, that is a very good example of how that could really happen, of interrupting, ruining rapport. Now, granted, that's not really interrupting the conversation, but it's really understanding that interruptions can most certainly ruin rapport very fast, depending on the people the person, personality, things like that. So we have to be very mindful. We have to build the skill in a way that allows us to find the natural pause in the conversation, and then it's almost like we have to attack that natural pause, right? So that that person feels heard. We provide a reflection, and then we move on with interrupting. So the skill of interrupting, I'll add that here, is the skill is directive in the sense that the coach is the expert of the process in supporting the session, gaining traction and forward momentum. So it is your responsibility as a coach to keep that on track and forward momentum. So that is one reason for the interruption, or for adding this as a skill. It's important to interrupt with respect and compassion, yet with purpose, right? So I think that's also very important. Respect and compassion, but with purpose, right? Or and with purpose. And then, sometimes asking permission to step in, right? Interrupt can take away many of the negative feelings that the person might experience when interrupted, right? So kind of giving them the upfront, hey, I'm getting ready to interrupt you. I need to step in here because we need to get back on track. I realize that this topic is very important to you, and I can see that all over your face right now. However, we really need to be able to get this goal set, right? And that's what we need to go back to, or however it is, getting it back on track. But really being able to do it with grace. And then, just like I always say, telling people what you're getting ready to do, in my opinion, is always the best, right? Just like I do my coaching sessions, whenever I do it, I give people the agenda up front, right? Because they know what they're getting ready to do. We're not going to steer away from it, right? So it automatically helps with some of that. I would also say in your coaching agreements, you can add in there that I will have to interrupt, but when I do, I will provide you with an explanation, or, I will provide you with that we're going to interrupt you, but we need to stay on topic, and give them the reasons for interruptions. So that's an easy way to kind of combat it up front. So that way, whenever you do interrupt people, it's not going to be damaging that rapport, for sure. Well, it may still damage your rapport, but you've done everything in your power to help combat or mitigate not damaging that rapport, if that's the person that doesn't like it. Oh. Okay, so when to interrupt and redirect. When the person has said a lot, or when the person has said a lot and you need them to bottom line or summarize. I think that's another skill that you can teach people to kind of do in the moment, is if they are on a topic that is meaningful to them. Let's just say it's a kid who was talking about a goal and then somehow got on a topic about their dad that they never see because they live in another state, or they're deployed. I think that's realistic in our district as well. It's okay to help them bottom line what they're trying to talk about, because that's meaningful to them. So, you could really kind of say, hey, I'm getting ready to interrupt you. I know this is so meaningful to you. I really want to hear what you got to say. If you could summarize that in one sentence right now, so that we can kind of move on with the topic that we have to, right? And it kind of gives them some empowerment and some power over that process, but also, gets us back on topic. When their story is about someone else fixing or blaming, right? So, a lot of times we kind of back to that same scenario. If they're blaming their dad because they're not there, right, in another state, deployed, whatever it is, then we can almost redirect that back as well. But also, I think a lot of times we see, especially in the coaching setting, to where people really want someone else to fix their problems. I shouldn't say in the coaching session. We as people, and especially in America, feel like somebody else should fix our problems. So it's very common to run into that part, right? Is that someone else should be doing this. So why am I getting bothered by this? And then they start going down that rabbit hole. That is a time to kind of bring it back in. And then that way, we can kind of move forward. The other piece is, when what the partner has said is important and needs to be explored more deeply: insight, perspective, struggle, values, oversight. So this kind of goes back to the original, kind of getting them to bottom line it. But, as they're kind of going in and they're like, man, this really is something that's completely outside of the scope of what we had already agreed to for setting our long-term behavioral goal, action steps, and all that. Like if this is something that's going to take a whole other coaching session to knock out, that means you should go ahead and interrupt and pull them back into what you're doing currently. And it's not to not validate what that is, but it is to say, you know, you really just brought up a heavy topic, and that's something that we may not be able to get to today. We have to stay on topic here because of X, Y, and Z, because we got to get this done. But we will go back to that if we are able to get these, you know, get this whole process done and stay on track. So I think that's a good way to still validate that they brought up something kind of heavy, but not to jump right into it. And then when the person goes off on a tangent, right? I feel like we see that all the time, right? The rabbit holes of whatever is out there and how it happens all the time. So how to interrupt and redirect. Here's just some easy ways to kind of do it, right? Important to discuss and set this process up for during the first coaching appointment, coaching agreement. I think I already talked about that, right? Is if we do this at the coaching agreement, and have it written out to say, I will interrupt you for these types of things, and this is how I will interrupt you, will help your clients kind of get set up that way. Let the client know why it might be important, right? We are getting back on topic, because if we don't, then we're not going to get to that action step that you need to do and know what you need to do when you leave here today, right? So kind of give them that information. Let the client know you are interrupting the story, not the person. I think that's important too, right? Because a lot of times people take it personally, and we're not trying to take it personally, right? We are truly trying to stay on topic, and we're just trying to interrupt this tangent. I wouldn't use the word tangent. People have negative connotation with that, but we're trying to interrupt that tangent to get us back on topic so that we don't go down, you know, so that we can get what we need to accomplish today. Ask how the client would like to or would feel comfortable being interrupted. And I do think that could happen in that coaching agreement conversation, right? Is, you know, there's going to be times that I might have to interrupt you. How would you really like that to happen? You know, would you like for me to put up a hand? Would you like me to say a word, right? Sometimes you can come up with a common word in your session, things like that can kind of be like a stopping point to kind of get back on track. So just some common things that can kind of help you kind of get there and kind of help with that. Yeah, how would be the best way for me to pause or interrupt you during this session or a session? I think that's just a good way to do it. And even pause is a good word, right? Because sometimes interrupt even has that negative connotation to it. So how can we find that best way to create that pause whenever we need to get back on topic? Let's see, interrupt and redirect, kind of a practice, right? Here goes some examples. Let's pause for a moment and notice, right? Let's pause this conversation. Let's pause talking about your dad for a moment and notice that we moved away from talking about doing your math homework, right? Or whatever it is, right? Now they went so far off topic, and probably some of that was being a distraction, right? I'm going to stop you right there, or right here for a moment, so we can dive deeper into what you just said, right? So now you're giving them space to kind of speak and kind of bottom line what they went on to. I hear this story is important to you. What did you learn, right? Kind of narrowing it down to a specific place. You've said a lot. How can you best say that in one sentence, right? Getting to that bottom line. I think that is really a good one. And I'll say I feel like that's a good one with kids with that ADHD that I was talking about before, right? Is you've said a lot here, right? How can you bottom line that for me? And they're not going to know what bottom line is, but how can you really get that down to one sentence, right? In one breath, right? One sentence, one breath, and be able to kind of reflect that back to them. And then you've said, or you have a lot to say. What is the most important thing you want me to know about this? I think that's another pretty powerful or impactful one as well, that people really like to kind of hear, right? They like to be a part of that. And you kind of have this way to kind of transition that conversation. Let's see. So just some more ways here. May I pause you for a moment? I want to hear what is most important about your story, right? So we really want to know about your story. Let me pause you for a moment. You have already had success in this area, right? Now we're kind of reflecting it back to them in a strength-based approach. You said that you were inspired by fishing and love to go camping. These are important values for your happiness, right? So now we summarized it. Now let's go back to how these support your health, right? So that got them right back on track of being able to do that. I think that's a real good one. Um, hmm. Do you all want to practice this? Yeah, I see some head nods, some no's. It's okay. I think the only reason I ask is I was going to open it up to any other questions and things like that and almost wrap it up for the night, but we're kind of an hour early. But let me ask some of these questions. What experiences do you all have now currently with interrupting, and how did this kind of relate to you all in the work that you do now? Go ahead, Christina.
I just had to do it today, actually, and
I knew
it
it.
kind of feels um it feels good. I kind of feel like it gives me permission to do that because like you said, like I always feel kind of bad, but they just kind of the student just kind of started repeating themselves because they were so worked up and they didn't know what else to say, but they felt like they needed to keep talking and they just kept repeating themselves. So I said, okay, it sounds like this is what you're thinking, and let's just stop for a second and take a couple deep breaths and, um, think about what we want to do next now that this thing happened. And it actually worked really well, and I think the student was actually relieved that I interrupted them.
That's awesome. So they were relieved, but it sounds like you did great, and then you still got them back on track, right? I think that's the
Yeah.
one of the most important things, right? It's that interruption with purpose. And to your point, I bet it is, especially if you have that ADHD style brain, right? That quiet space, your mind's going a million miles a minute and you're feeling uncomfortable. So a lot of times they don't know what to say and they're just filling the space with words, right? And then
Yeah.
that can be challenging. But also at the same time, it seems like you handle it very well, right? A lot of times whenever they are that way, they're feeling anxious. So by providing that structure, you're actually being able to get them back on topic, provide them with less anxiety, a skill, I guess, so to speak, to be like, okay, I don't have to fill that space. Now
Yeah.
I've reflected, now I can move forward and really helping them out. That's great.
Yeah. So I appreciate that validation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I will always say interruption, it's we don't like to interrupt, right? And then we always wait maybe longer than we need to find that natural pause and break in things, right? And we're like, okay, and then you're like, oh, do I interrupt them now? Now I've let them talk for the last 5 minutes of this topic, right? So your mind's going a million miles a minute, and I think it's perfectly natural to have those types of things going on. Let's see, Jamie Road, in your experience, if you interrupt them in a session, do they tend to bring it up again during other sessions, or does it help them to stop talking about it? I would say in my
Yes.
experience, yes. I would say yes and yes on both of those fronts. I feel like if it's a topic that's meaningful to them, they're going to bring it up again. If it was a topic, maybe almost like that ADHD brain, that we were talking about, and then they went off on some other thing or they're repeating the same thing over and over, I would say you see some of those things stop, right? But I would say if it's something that's meaningful to them, they're going to try to bring it back up again for sure.
And a quick story,
I've-
Charlie, around that. There's I've said this before that I think coaching is like 20% this fancy book learning and 80%, instincts and things like that. And I had a client that, I think I got skills. I used interrupt and redirect with her, but it got to be like by session 4, I realized if I did not give her 10 minutes to tell me what a horrible boss she had, her boss happened to be her niece too, so there was a lot of interesting dynamics going on there. But to tell me the one or two horrible things that her boss did that week at work, we weren't going to get anywhere. She was a totally different person, but if she got that 10 minutes at the beginning of the session, when I opened with how'd your week go, and she'd tell me about her boss, and then we're able to dig in, and then we'd make progress on the goals and stuff. If I didn't give that, the rest of the session was just ambivalence. And I learned that, and that's why I said yes and yes to that last question. Because sometimes you interrupt and redirect, and yeah, it never comes up again. But it's just people quirks, I call them.
That's right. The people quirks for sure.
I think
that's
Christina did a nice job of highlighting something counselors do, and that is asking whoever it is when you're uncomfortable or don't know how to interrupt, hey, take a deep breath with me. It gives both of you a chance to like woosah. And then, are you uncomfortable talking about this issue, or are you uncomfortable in the room? How can I help you kind of feel like you're centered?
Yeah, absolutely. I think offering that skill and centering and grounding technique is definitely especially with a lot of our kids for sure, is the way to go. But even people in general, right? Having that breathing practice. But I'd also say, to Don's point too, for ourselves, right? Because we might already be in the back of our heads like, oh man, I'm gonna have to interrupt this person. They're talking about something, right? So it gives you that woosaba moment, right? Rub your ears and all that, and I think that's great as well. Let's see, anything else?
I had a quick question about the 20 minute video that we need to turn in.
That's funny. I was going to jump right into that.
Oh,
So
then there's your
what's your
segue.
question though? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, well, mostly I was wondering if we had, I'm sure you would say yes, but if we had any questions or need guidance to get that done, I was wondering if we could ask you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please reach out, and through Teams, email, my cell phone number, I'll put that in the chat too. Please reach out to me. I would say email sometimes isn't the best, just because I'm part-time at the district, so I'm not there all the time. So really probably my cell phone would probably be best. But I felt like these are the groups. Now, if there's issues with these groups, please let me know. For whatever reason, no judgment at all. If there's something like, hey, there's somebody already in my building that I would like to sit down and talk to, please let me know. Again, no judgment on your partner. I can switch things around. But let me know sooner than later. So if you don't feel like saying something now, reach out to me hopefully by tomorrow, so that we can not let people set up appointments and talk to people and all that. But I feel like these are the groups. So the best way that I feel like to handle this, again, whatever stage you all do is up to you all. That's your kind of decision, whatever you feel comfortable with, because we want you to have your best foot forward on the evaluation. And then the other part is just set up a Teams meeting, record it in Teams. And then you'll be able to get that video. You can download it, or you can just share it with myself. And then we'll determine on whether Todd or myself will be who's the person setting up a meeting with you, just to kind of sit down and talk. Those meetings will be typically the same, about 20 minutes to an hour. We'll probably schedule an hour. We don't necessarily have to be there for the hour, but we'll schedule it just to kind of do that, to make sure we have the time, answer every question you have, go over the form, go over everything, right? Kind of get all that stuff knocked out from a mentor session. And then that would be the goal. And then after that mentor session, you'll get an evaluation form back. Hang on to that evaluation form, because again, like I said, you'll need that for your actual evaluation, or your taking the exam. And when I say taking the exam, you don't need it for the actual exam. You just need it for your application and all that type of stuff. That's what the national board wants to see, that you were evaluated. And then that would be the goal. So, and then on the 23rd, Just kicked my dog. Did not mean to. He's literally laying on my feet. Threw me off. But once you're done with that on the 23rd, I think it was, the 23rd, we'll hand out certificates and do all that. We'll be completely done. We won't hand them out in class. You'll get an email with your certificate on the 23rd. And then that way, again, you'll need the certificate and the evaluation to sign up for the exam. And then we'll kind of, any questions y'all have for the exam, maybe what we'll do is we'll set up almost like drop-in times, because I know school is out after that day. So maybe we'll just set in some drop-in times that you all could log on. And if y'all have any questions, or you'll have my cell phone number actually. If y'all need me, just reach out to me. Definitely, if we're on break or anything and you're getting ready to take that exam, please reach out if you're getting nervous or just wanting to know what to focus on or whatever it is. I'll still go back and say right now, the Coach in Psychology manual, I still think is probably the best manual to study. I haven't heard, I see Todd shaking his head yes. I mean, I haven't heard anybody say contrary to that of what other books to focus on. I'd say the next one to focus on maybe is the motivational interviewing book, but then there's other ones that I could even say would be better to focus on there as well. But anyway, we got all those books for you. They're in our teams, so you don't even need to buy them unless you're one of those people that has to have the book. And I'm that person. That's why I'm smiling. I have to have my book. I couldn't do it on a PDF. I need to highlight and write. So, but I don't think any of those books are over, $25, $30. I could be wrong, because books are expensive. It's stupid. So that's that. So any questions about these pieces right here? And I'm going to go ahead and put my cell phone number in the chat. And probably put who you are if you do text me, because I might not text you back or mark it as spam or whatever. Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
What is the timeline to have the video done?
I would say I felt like if we could have everything done by the 23rd of May. Now, if you're running up to issues on that, let me know, or, if there's just problems, conflicts of schedules, that's, just natural things happening, let me know that too.
And if you do backwards planning, Christina, if everything needs to be done by the 23rd of May, you probably got at least 10 days in there to coordinate and schedule the meeting for the evaluation. So you probably want to get your video in by the middle of May, so you can meet with Charlie or myself sometime before the 23rd to get your feedback.
Okay, because I heard him say the 23rd earlier, and then I was panicking that he meant April 23rd.
Yes, they need it done.
And not May.
That's next Wednesday, Christina.
Yeah. If you could have this all done by Wednesday. What's funny is I was going to almost cancel tonight and put y'all into breakouts and just have you do your evaluation tonight. But then I thought that would have been too scary for some people. I think some people would have been like, all right, let's knock this out. But I think some people would have been like, oh no.
I'd be feeling both at the same time.
That's right.
I would.
So I would say, but I would say to that point, if you can knock it out as fast as possible, the better, the more that this is all on your mind, probably the better, right? I think just naturally.
Okay, so just to clarify, we're choosing one stage of the process.
That's right.
And then we're focusing on that one stage, and we don't have to do the same stage. They could do one stage. I could do it. They're totally different things.
Yep.
And then it's a 20 minutes through that one stage.
That's right. And whoever is mentoring you may not even know what the other person did. So it doesn't even matter what stages y'all do, for sure.
Okay.
And then Ruth said, is this our last class? No, the 23rd is technically our last class, which is that group coaching one that we were talking about earlier. You may have joined a little bit late and missed that conversation, but the 23rd, we have our group coaching class that day. And I know some people may have conflicts that day just because it's the last day of school, getting classrooms straightened up or whatever, admin has you doing that day. All right. All right. So the next thing I wanted to talk to everybody about is I am putting together a proposal for next year. And one thing that we're putting in that proposal is to potentially have health coaches coach certain schools. So I wanted to kind of reach out to you all. I don't think we have no plans. I don't have like how much time this would take or any of that type of stuff. I have no real details about it. However, is there anybody here that would want to help us do that? So I'll say what the goal is. I see your hand on. So I'll tell you a little bit about the plan. Is we picked 3 schools, or we're going to pick 3 schools. We haven't picked them yet. We're going to pick 3 schools, and we're really going to try to partner with those schools. And one thing that we're going to do is try to offer health coaching to the employees at those 3 schools. And then the next thing that we're going to do is for the yoga instructors, so those who are in the yoga program, we're also going to offer yoga at those 3 schools for staff and not staff and students, just staff. And the goal is to really measure this over time and really be able to see this. We're also going to work with the admin at those 3 schools, and we're going to train them in that 5-minute coaching session that you learned about today. And then we're going to try to marry that with observation. So if they go and they do that observation, then instead of starting the observation with, with the observation documents and all that they would do actually a 5-minute coaching session that is around what they want to move forward with their self-care. So really the goal is to kind of work with multiple different areas in these 3 schools. We're not going to pick them based on the kids. Usually it's always like, hey, we need an elementary, middle, and a high school. We're not going to look at it that way. We're going to look at it from burnout and attrition. So we're going to pick a high attrition school. So if there's a lot of turnover there, we have, I think, a few schools that really fit about 50% turnover, right? I think overall in a district, we're at about 30% turnover, which is, drastically higher than the national average. It's higher even in Colorado Springs. I couldn't really find the data for all of Colorado Springs, but it looked like our data was definitely worse than the other districts in Colorado Springs even. So the goal would be to find one school that has a very high turnover rate. The next goal would be to find one that has a medium turnover rate, and then one that has kind of a a low turnover rate. And then we're going to coach and we're going to try to implement this in those types of schools instead of really focusing on, the grade levels of the schools. Trying to think of other things that we're going to do, but we're really going to try to implement a wellness culture inside of those 3 schools and see if we can impact that attrition rate. I'll share the PowerPoint if these are things that y'all want to do. I'm building the PowerPoint that we're going to present. Well, I say we, I'm not presenting it. My boss is going to present it to probably Rachel or Wendy. I don't know which one, but he's going to try to get us the opportunity. I'll say this is the bad thing. I know some of you all are wellness leaders as well. The wellness leader aspect of this, we were historically getting paid by Cigna. As many of you know, our benefits package is changing next year to a different insurance packet. We don't know if we're going to get, actually we know we're not getting the same kickback that we got before. So we're not getting the same 50,000. So like the yoga equipment, the healthy teaching kitchen, a lot of that fell under that grant, we're going to have to start finding other ways to fund. I don't even know why I was bringing that up. Oh, I was bringing that up because really what I wanted to do was to use some of that stipend money to end up paying for the coaching, the yoga, and some of the other things that we're going to be implementing in that school, in those 3 school districts. We're also going to try to have EAP there up front, much like we're doing at CRA now, but to kind of have that very much up front at the school district. So then we have somebody at each one of those 3 schools potentially all the time, or maybe like on a Friday, like we're doing at certain schools right now. And then they have, the ability to get into EAP very fast. Our EAP for our new insurance isn't really changing. It's changing providers, but we still get 5 free sessions per incident. So that doesn't change. So, I feel like we're going to try to maximize those things. We're also going to try to create a resource page for everything. And then the other thing is the 8 components of self-care. We're going to theme that for one per month, and we're going to have that in those 3 school districts to where we really partner on those components of self-care and then try to blast it out to the schools. So anyway, if you are interested, I know I've seen a lot of hands and different things like that, reach out to me, let me know. You know, hopefully we will be able to find stipend type of money to be able to pay you to do this. It won't be like you get paid per session or anything, but maybe it'll be almost like the health and wellness stipends would just go towards this, or maybe a little bit limited ones, or maybe there's a tiered system. I don't know what it looks like yet, but we're trying to create it as we do this. And for sure, if you have input of what you would like to see in those schools, please let me know as well, because I think that could be very interesting in trying to do that. Because the other thing that I already know that I want to do is try to implement something that is a little bit more fitness based besides just yoga. Something like TRX or something like that to try to get people more active and things like that. So anyway, I wanted to put that in everybody's ear just because for the yoga folks, you're probably going to hear this again next Tuesday. But I think this is a really cool opportunity for us to really take ownership of our health and wellness. I know y'all hear me probably talk about this a lot, but what I'd really like to see in the future is that every time we go and we have a grant for health and wellness, guess who has a TRX certification? Todd does, that's right. Man, now I completely lost track of what I was getting ready to say. Completely lost it. But this is what I was going to say. Every time we get a grant, instead of looking externally from our organization to say who can come in and provide something health and wellness for us, we're going to have the capabilities to do this internally. That means every grant that we get will only enhance the work that we're doing. It's not going to be something that's replacing it or whatever, right? Because we're going to try to build this culture in D2 to where it is just on autopilot, and we're going to use the internal resources that we have, and then we'll go after grants saying, this is the work that we're doing. Can you provide us money to enhance it by bringing this in or bringing that in or those types of things, instead of what I feel like, and you all can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, is many times we look at different grants and things like that to come in to provide a service from an external entity that then goes away at some point and doesn't really give us the tools and skills that we need to really enhance moving forward. So that is the goal of moving forward. And yes, TRX, Todd does have a TRX certification. Some of you all may have, or we may have mentioned this in the intro to whole health course, but TRX is something that we implemented at the VA as well. And it's very easy to implement. If you're not familiar with TRX, there's suspension systems that you can hang from a door. There's suspension systems you can have an anchor for. They have other other tools that you don't even need the suspension system for. And it's real easy to implement anywhere. I know we have some in the gyms in our schools. So if you do have them, go in there and look at them. And if it's a certification you all might think you would want to get, let me know that as well. I'm very much bought in on TRX. I think it's so easy to implement and you can take it with you anywhere. And if you are a veteran, you can actually get a TRX suspension system issued to you by the VA. And they give you a free year of their app. I don't know if there's any veterans on the line, but just figured I'd say that. Or if you know a veteran, tell them they can go get their free suspension system, because they better get it now, because the VA's got all kinds of cuts, and I think that who knows if that's going to be one of them. So anyway, so that's what I wanted to mention at the end of this. I'll stop talking. Y'all have everything that you need. I'd love to be certified in TRX. Let's do it. Let's do it. Y'all have the people that you have. If there is a reason to change, please let me know ASAP. Otherwise, let me know if you run into any hiccups. thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and close out for tonight and give y'all 30 minutes or so back on your plate. Thanks, everybody.
Charlie,
Yeah, go
my
ahead.
name isn't on the list.
Oh my gosh, it's not. Thank you. I probably should have asked who's not listed on here. Let me figure that out. I'll probably have to put you in a triad, and then I'll wait to see if anybody emails me tomorrow, and
Okay.
then Monday or maybe by the close of business tomorrow or Monday morning, I will send out a new list with you in it. I apologize
Okay.
for that.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I probably should have asked if I was missing somebody, huh? All right, well, I guess I can stop recording, stop sharing, stop recording.